This is Coffee with Kelly, a dynamic podcast that's dedicated to driving positive change in school safety. I'm your host, Ethan Woodman, Product Marketing Specialist for Crisis Go, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Kelly Moore, Senior School Safety Specialist for Crisis Go. Our mission is to empower you with essential knowledge, tools, and inspiration required to foster a safer and more secure school environment. We hope this podcast will be the catalyst for transformation in your schools. Join us as we continue to dive into the world of school safety. Good morning, Kelly.
Ethan?
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing a lot better.
Good. You've been sick?
I've been sick, yes.
Yeah.
Pneumonia is no joke, for sure.
No joke.
I don't think I've ever had pneumonia.
That's why they make it difficult to spell. Because
I could spell it really well now because I've had to type it out so many times.
Yeah, they make it difficult because it's the normal person shouldn't spell it. You should only have an interest in it for some reason before you learn how to spell that word.
Apparently there might have been some allergic reaction on top of it that made it worse. So
yeah,
not only were my lungs full of junk, I also could barely take a breath. So a couple ER visits and a hospital stay later, and I think I'm finally on a positive track.
Yeah, that's good. Good to hear.
You got to deal with me for a little bit longer, I guess. So
yeah, we'll see. You're not the only one in control.
That was so ominous.
Control of that. We'll see.
I'm so worried now. We'll see, man. Well,
what are we talking about today?
Man, we're talking about something pretty good, I think. So basically, normally we do an in the news section, then we go into a main topic. But this podcast will primarily be focused off of the in the news section.
So we're going to have a whole topic from something that you read in the newspaper, right? Or online.
Yeah. So, first, the interesting part of this is that this news comes from the state that I live in. And it comes from a town adjacent to the town that I lived in for about 28 years. So, pretty close to home.
So give us the lowdown, the overview of what got your hairs all, cackle.
I'm just waiting for the next joke to come after that.
That's it. That's as far as I'm going to go today.
Okay. Thought you were going to make a bald joke.
No, not yet.
Oh man, it's coming. All right. Yeah, so I basically received this news because I'm still in this town's Facebook group, essentially, and
the community. You're part of the community, right?
Yeah, I try. And so basically, the news article was posted in this group, kind of promoting it in a positive way. The community members in here were like, so basically, the news article is, this other school district in an adjacent town invested $800,000. $800,000 into a. So what the article says is that it was $800,000 for a active threat panic button, basically. So then I did a little bit more digging, and based on some of the comments within that group, it was actually there was a sprinkler system upgrade that they did, and then they added cameras. I saw the brand of the cameras, and I know them well, so I know that they're actually really nice cameras. So there was a bit more in there, and then I guess the active threat button was a small piece of that, but even a small piece of $800,000 is still quite a bit of money. So in this group, everyone's commenting like, "Oh, why don't we have this? And we should have this." And so basically, the button is a modified version of a fire alarm, is what it is. I actually found the company that makes it. And they don't even have. It's like they don't even have the active threat version, so it looks like it was like modified to just say active threat, and then they added a different tone to it to distinguish from a fire alarm and then this alarm. But it works the same way. It's a hardware installed button on the wall. And obviously they bought multiples of them. They said they were strategically placed around the schools. So this is a multiple building. There's multiple buildings. It's a school district.
Right.
So
they have them in all their buildings.
Yeah, there's more than 4. I don't want to be specific on the number, but there's more than 4. So, because I've been here for so long and talking with you, and I instantly recognized like this is maybe wasn't the best use of their funds, because I know that if they were to, I know that we offer something that would work a lot better and gives them a lot more capabilities for significantly less.
Right, but
money.
we have to realize a couple of things, right? So let me ask you this before I start getting into our conversation. What made you so upset about that article?
I guess it's when I saw that, I instantly thought that there's no way that they did an adequate amount of research into what would really solve the problem. So I had a lot of questions, and then it just kind of made me go down this path of some. Could it be this? Could it be that? Did this happen? I don't know.
Well, the headline probably caught your attention first, right?
Well, yeah, right. So it's $800,000. I mean, you don't see that number attributed to a school safety solution very often.
Right.
Very, very rarely, even with a sprinkler system and the cameras and the labor to install those, $800,000 is a lot.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So yeah, and I think there's some. I saw the article as well, and I immediately go, really? $800,000 for this? But the way that the article was written leads you to really start saying, oh, they just spent $800,000 on active threat alarms, panic buttons, right?
Yeah, and each one of those is you can get them for about $50 a piece.
Yeah. So, but the issue comes in is, I don't know what their funding was like or how they got their funding. But it was apparent that they did several upgrades for that $800,000, and it included these panic buttons. So they got new cameras, new sprinkler systems, probably upgraded their fire alarm pulls or buttons, whatever I don't remember what it was that they had. And they added these other alarms, panic alarms, active threat alarms. So let's look at the positive of that, steps to make their school safer. Right.
At least they're thinking about it.
Right. And they're really looking at in fact, we talk about this all of the time. Is there a mandate in your state for Alyssa's Law to install panic buttons? I don't believe there is. Right. So, but if you start seeing this mandate start to spread like we're seeing with Alyssa's Law, we want you to look at your schools and say, is this a good mandate? And if so, can I take steps now to come into compliance with Alyssa's Law, right? And install these panic buttons. Now, Alyssa's Law is a fantastic law. The intent is to get law enforcement and other first responders to the place of an emergency, life-threatening emergency, as quickly as possible. So you need a couple of things to do that. One, you need to have the ability to send an alert or an alarm to your dispatchers, your communication centers, and they understand what's happening with that alarm, and they understand who to send and where to send them. Right. So so what they essentially did here is they upgraded all of these systems, and you have a button that, and I will right up front, I have not done any research on the company that provided them. I don't know how many of these they have installed, and I'm not bashing the company or the school for that matter in any case. But when you start looking at the similarities to a fire alarm, here's what fire alarms typically do. You have a pull station or you push a button, and it sends an alarm and tells everyone to evacuate. And it sends an alarm to the fire department or to the dispatch center saying, hey, there's a fire alarm ringing at this location. And when you have multiple fire alarms in a building, they're identified by zone, generally zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, right?
Sure. Yep.
So that they have an idea of where to go. So they're telling you where the fire alarm and by association where the fire is likely to be. The problem is that those fire alarms are spread throughout the building. So unless you have a map or a key to those zones, you don't know where it is. It doesn't say room 104. It says zone 5.
Yeah.
And so you have to be familiar with that. Fire departments have been requiring these things for years and years and years. Police departments, not so much, right? This is sort of, it's not new technology for me. I'm familiar with panic buttons, but the way these were installed, it looks like it was installed, and again, not doing any research, a fire alarm company, right? And so they're going to install them like they do fire alarms, and that makes it easy for people to know how to operate it. Makes it easy for people to press or pull the button. It makes it easy for them to understand where it is, right? Where that pull station is. Here's where we start looking at the difference between a fire and an active threat situation. Is as you and I have talked for, we're working on over 18 months now, right?
Yeah.
When we start talking about alarms and emergency protective actions and sequencing response to an alarm, you have to ask what next, right?
What is my next action?
What is my next action? What, as an emergency manager, as a school principal, what is the next thing that I should be doing? And hopefully we figured this out long before that button is pushed, right? And how does that alarm help me with those next actions, right? So if I press the alarm, what am I doing next? Like other panic buttons, it's singularly focused on an active threat, right? So when you start talking about panic buttons that are single use cases, active shooter, active threat, whatever you guys out there in the world are calling it these days, then every time that alarm goes off, there's a belief that there is an active shooter. So first of all, how do you drill that? How do you communicate that that's going to happen and that it is a drill? How are you going to work through this so that people understand the differences in the sound between a fire alarm and a active threat alarm? How do you, as public or as a principal, understand exactly where it's at and what's happening because panic buttons are hit the sound. There's no way to communicate. So how are you communicating with your people? How are you communicating with law enforcement? How are you communicating with the fire department, the ambulance services, hospitals? How are you doing that? If you have a good plan for that, then these are great tools if they can be activated, right? So with especially with the building codes of today, you generally have time to realize, one, it is an actual fire. You pull the alarm. So you see the smoke, you smell the smoke, you see people running out of the boys' bathroom because somebody just lit the trash can on fire, whatever. You have time. It's different when somebody's trying to kill you. It's different when things are actively trying to attack you.
Like, can I
So,
interject here?
sure.
Like in that situation, why would someone be pulling that alarm? What would cause them to pull that alarm? What would need to happen for them to pull that alarm?
Depends on what their training is, right?
It's gonna be what? It's gonna be like almost one of two things: is either they hear gunshots and have recognized that they are gunshots, right? They go through the deliberation phase and all that.
Denial, deliberation,
Denial,
decisive
deliberation,
moment.
decisive moment. I forgot what the whole thing was called.
We're going to pound that into you, right?
Yeah. So it's like either they're going to hear gunshots or they see the person walking in the hallway with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between that and a fire is that the fire doesn't also see you pulling that alarm and recognize that you're trying to hinder their efforts.
Right. But
like what?
So what's in an active threat? I get it, but here's the bottom line: is I'd much rather. We've talked about this too. I'd much rather have a school district take steps to make their school safer.
Sure.
But they can't take a step. They have to take a step and then another step. And it's a journey, right?
Yeah.
So
be continued
so I hear
steps.
you. So here's maybe this without talking to the district safety director or people. Maybe this is the first step. Maybe this is the second step. And there are other steps to come. Does pulling that alarm make them safer? Probably. Does it make it easier for them to communicate with law enforcement, depending on how their communication centers are situated? Do they also contact the fire department and the ambulances and the emergency medical services? Do they also do that? If that's the case, then this is a step in the right direction. But then you have to start asking those other questions. How do you? What is the most important first step in an active threat situation? I'm going to test you on that.
Sorry, say that again.
What is the most important first step in an active threat situation?
Let's say like I'm a teacher. It's to get them in a protective action, basically. Like my first thing is to protect them in some way. Like I'm gonna lock them in the room. I'm gonna lock the doors, do all that, and then I'm gonna hit that button.
Yeah. So it's actually regardless of your role. The first most important step is to protect yourselves and those that you're responsible for and those around you. Protect yourself. Get to a safe place, right? Whatever that means to you under those circumstances. That's the first most important step. So
going out in the middle of the hallway and pressing a button isn't.
If you can do it while you're en route, sure, and you press the button on the way. If you think about it, if your mind thinks that way, then that's great. The other thing is the closer you are to the incident, the actual what's happening, the less you're going to think about stuff like that.
Sure.
Right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're going to, and when I say like think about stuff like that is pressing buttons, and you're going to try to start saving yourself, and you're going to get into lockdown or whatever. And so you're hoping at that point that one of two things occurs. One, that somebody else understands what's happening and they press the button while you're getting your little kiddos into a safe protective action. Um, and um, and or that you have the ability to do the same thing from inside your room or inside your protected space.
Yeah. So
Right.
they had a video attached to this article, and the video
Mm-hmm.
shows the buttons in the middle of the hallway.
Right.
So right
Mm-hmm.
off the bat, like, you're going against the first action. You can't go and put yourself and protect you and yourself, which usually is throwing yourselves in the classroom and locking it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who goes out in the middle of the hallway and presses the
Right.
buttons?
So
Do they draw straws? Like, what the heck?
yeah. So
It's like,
that's what I'm talking about, right?
it's
So
crazy. It's
who's
nuts.
responsible for, at all costs, who's responsible for making sure that button gets pulled, right?
Yeah.
And it's not and I will argue with any fire guy,
I know you
it
will.
is not the same. It is not the same.
Yeah. No,
And
it's totally different.
right, so and all I have to do is say, okay, I'm going to go in after the active threat as law enforcement. Fire guy, come with me. He ain't coming. Right. And I totally get it. I'm not bashing the fire guys, but it's a totally different scenario, totally different mindset. And
Yep.
so we have to understand the differences of those alarms and what we have to do next and what happens if we can't get to that alarm. And that's, like I said before, I think Alyssa's law is a fantastical law. The intent of it
Yes.
is fantastic. The idea that you have to do this, that, or the other is not such a good idea to me. You have to have the ability to hit a button, whatever it is that you have, that can follow the intent of Alyssa's law, and that is notify law enforcement and emergency responders what's happening and where, and able to communicate as they're responding to what is going on and what is changing. Right? Because here's the actual intent of Alyssa's law. And I've never talked to the creators of Alyssa's law, but here's the actual intent. If you boil it down to fundamentally what we're trying to do, create a mechanism and methodology for getting us the help as quickly as we can where it's needed to save lives.
Yes.
And we can get into what a panic button is and all of these things, but we also have to talk about the redundant actions that need to be taken in case you can't press any button. What redundancies do you have in place if nobody presses that button and everyone is stuck in their protective actions where they should be and they can't reach the button? They're afraid to go outside the hall to reach the button that could literally be right outside their door. I don't know where they were placed. They were strategically placed, but I don't know where that is. The assumption is that everyone is, at any given time, somebody is going to be near, close enough to a button where that person who is close enough will actually press that button. and I'm not even going to go into my big red button theory where people have a hard time pressing that button, right? They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, I mean, it's, I get it, but
yeah, but
it
so
kind of,
but go ahead.
um, if we can, I wanted to bring up something that we've discussed before. You,
Mhm.
maybe you're getting to it, but you're kind of going in that direction. Let's talk about this button in relation to swatting, because we talked about
So
swatting before.
yeah. I
So I
wasn't
feel like,
really, I wasn't going there, but we can
okay,
because this is one of the differences between pulling a fire alarm and pulling falsely activating a fire alarm and falsely activating an active threat alarm
mm,
is the type of response that you're going to get, right? So if these buttons are strategically located throughout the school, how are they protected so that they prevent false alarms from kids walking by and just hitting the button or pulling the button? How are they there? Right now, we get false alarms all of the time with fire alarms, right?
and
So what's
you have firefighters show up with all their gear, and they
they walk
obviously
through the
probably arrive,
halls.
and they don't see any fire, but they probably have to go in anyways, right? I'm assuming.
They have to go search and see where the zone was and look at the zone. And we'll get into zones in just a second. But what's the response? What's the intent of the response of the firefighters when they get there?
It's to put out a fire.
Put out the fire, right?
Yeah.
Put the wet stuff on the red stuff and call it a day, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into this. I'm going to let people's imagination go on this. What is the intent of law enforcement when they get the report of an active shooter? Why is swatting such a horrific event? What is the potential there? Answer those questions for yourself, and you'll understand the difference between a panic button that is sitting right next to a fire alarm and a fire alarm. There's a whole different mindset coming through that door when you hit a panic button or an active threat button. Whole different mindset.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful with that, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying there's lots of things to think about. And
Just if you could take this out if you want, but
yep, that's right.
there's
And you could, but you need to
there's
ask your,
some
go ahead.
there's for some, even conducting a drill, they consider traumatic.
Yep.
Just
And
imagine if
how do you
that
drill
thing
that,
gets
right?
pulled.
Yeah.
Just
How do you drill
imagine if
that?
that thing gets, it will take traumatic to a whole different level.
Yep. The so the other thing that we want to talk about is the location, the zone that I call it on the fire department or the fire alarms, is they have these zones to show location because the fire can be in any part of this zone. And
How typically, like, how big is a zone, do
I
you
don't
think?
have any idea. It can be pretty big. You might have uh, so if you have, let's say you have 6 pole stations in a given building, it's 1/6 of that building, right?
It's a big
So
area.
that's a big area. Um,
Yeah.
they don't have them in every room. They don't have them. You might have one or two in the at each end of the hallway, let's say, or what have you. I don't know. Maybe 3 in there. So sure, there's lots of them, and you can figure it out pretty quick. Heat, people are running out, those types of things, right? Um, the zones don't tell you a precise location. And we just talked a little bit about the closer you are to an incident, to the actual what's happening, to the event, close proximity wise, the less likely it is that you're going to be the one that actually pulls that alarm.
Makes
Somebody
sense.
further away from the incident is the person who's going to be more likely going to pull that alarm or push that button.
So just to clarify, is that because, let's say I'm in that situation where there is an active threat and it's like I visually can see them.
Mm-hmm.
My first action is basically hide, like go secure myself in a room with anyone that I'm responsible for, and then I'm looking to alert. But
Yeah.
that's my
So
first action is to do that. So is that why, like, obviously if I see them, my first action isn't going to be let me find this button and press it, right? Because it's
yeah.
time is of the essence.
So here's why. Sort of that, but um, when I say your first action should be to take protective action,
Mm-hmm.
protecting yourself and those that you're responsible for and those that are around you. That's your first charge. That's your
Yep.
first duty, is to get people going in that direction, whatever that direction means. Human nature, when it recognizes danger, you go through these stages: denial, deliberation, decisive moment, right? The closer you are to the actual event that is taking place, the violence or the threat that is occurring to you, generally, the quicker it is that you get from denial to, um, because you recognize the
Yeah.
danger is right there, right?
Sure.
There are people who take a long time to get through that. And when I say a long time, I'm talking 10, 15 seconds. That's a long time. You should
Yeah.
be you should be moving like this, right? But um, the closer you are, the more likely you're going to recognize that need to take protective action. So your whole being is about getting into a safe position, not about pressing a little button on a wall. Whether it's a panic button, active threat button, or a fire button, it's about getting those actions. So the further away you are from those actions, the threat, what's occurring to you or your people, the more likely you are to press the button, right? So I can't tell you who's going to be that person. What I can tell you is that you're more likely going to you might not feel completely safe, but you're going to feel safe enough to think, I can press this button. I should press this button. And you're going to go over and press that button,
Mm. Okay.
right? So the reason I'm illustrating this in this manner is because that, by human nature, you're more likely to press a button that is located some distance from the actual event,
Most likely in a different zone.
most likely in a different zone, right? And so um, we're going to start in law enforcement officer mode. Where is it? Where is it? Zone 3. We're getting the alarm from zone 3. Okay. When the actual event is occurring at zone 6 or 7, is it that big a deal? It's not that big a deal time wise. But if zone 3 requires a left turn and zone 7 requires a right turn, you can see the problem. It's going to take some time for them to shift from what they believe is happening to what is actually happening,
Right.
right? So the the other part of this human nature is, as soon as you feel safe enough, you will look to call for help, because in today's society, we look to call for help. We have people for that, whatever that is. If there's an emergency, we have somebody whose job it is, has the responsibility to come fix that for us. But you're going to wait till you feel like you can do that. And where are you? Hopefully, you're not in the hallway,
Hopefully not.
right? So, is it a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing. Are there other ways to help with that? Yes. The questions that you have to ask is, if nobody pushes it from the hallway, or they push it from the wrong zone, how do I correct that? How do I communicate that? How do I get help if nobody actually pushes that button? Do I just call 911? And if so, who's actually responsible for doing that? If they pushed it in the wrong zone, how do I correct that?
You need to have a way to communicate those
Way to do
details
that,
better.
right? If the right person can't get to that button, what do you expect them to do? How do you expect them to call and communicate with the help that is responding? Those are questions you have to ask.
Yep.
And there's technology out there. I'm not going to get into the specifics. There's technology out there that can help you with that, can help with that redundancy, can be layered on top of what they're currently doing. Now, let's talk a little bit about the cost, because I read that article the same way that you did, especially that headline.
Yeah, well, I mean that's
District spends
marketing. That's marketing for you,
right? Should I tell them the book I'm writing?
No, I leave it out. Leave it out.
The $800,000 spent to respond to active threat, or I forget exactly how, but it led everyone to believe that, at least from my perspective, I immediately thought they just spent $800,000 on these panic buttons.
On a singular solution.
On a singular solution. Yep.
Yep. Yep. No,
and
literally everyone thought that.
Yep. And is that the best use of your money? One of the biggest obstacles we always see is one of the biggest obstacles we always hear about in school districts in implementing any safety thing measure is money. Pushing grants aside, because there are lots of grants out there for lots of different things, safety being one of them. But this is not a large district, and they spent $800,000 on these solutions. Why do you think it costs so much, Mr. Woodman? Even if it wasn't, and we know that it wasn't all spent on the panic button.
I have a couple theories. I don't know if I want to. I probably won't say them all. Some of them might sound a little crazy, plausible, but crazy. I mean, honestly, whoever, I think from my belief, it's totally just personal. I think the buttons, the sprinkler systems, and the cameras came from an integrator. I think they were sold as a package, and I think that they marketed it well enough, and they said, "Here's what it's going to cost." And I think that based on because this district is in a very high income town, I think they simply put that number on it because I think they could get away with it.
Okay. Here's the install is labor intensive.
Sure. I mean, 800,000.
Well, so
come on.
In comparison, I'll give you a comparison, right? When I started work for the school district, they were installing new PA systems in 2 schools at the cost of $500,000, right?
What?
Yep. 500,000.
Crazy. That's
Why?
nuts.
Because you have to have all this labor come in. There's codes, there's permits, there's all of these things that have to be adhered to, and inspections done, and you have to pay a whole team of people to crawl up in attics, run conduit, run electrical, make sure everything's working, make sure everything is the way that it's supposed to be. It is labor intensive. So anything that's labor intensive or hardware intensive is going to cost you a lot more money. Plain and simple. And if you can get everything you want and you're willing to pay that money, then by all means, pay the money. But let's look at all of the other things that you could have potentially used that money for and have solved that problem for a lot less money. And
a lot less money.
here's one of the things that I will bring up now, and we can talk for a little bit, but we're getting close. When I say, does it accomplish everything that you want to accomplish?
I mean,
I will
in
bring
their
up
minds,
this.
it probably does.
It does, but we've also talked about where tendency of school buildings and school security is to protect those that are inside the building.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at protecting everybody from 8 in the morning till 3:30 when everyone leaves while they're in the building.
Right.
Some 60% of all school shootings occur where?
Outside.
Outside.
Parking lots, football fields, etc.
Across the street, outside of the school.
So really, it would make more sense to put 60% of our efforts to protecting, to have more stuff on the outside.
Or the ability to do at least what we can do on the inside. And again, the cameras that, and I don't know what cameras were installed.
I do.
Don't care. I'm sure you do. I don't care. What are the capabilities of those cameras? Are they being monitored? Are they do they have AI on them to detect guns?
They
Those
could.
things.
Cameras
They could.
themselves,
Well,
no.
yeah. So we don't know, but these are other questions. If you have these, if you just spent a bunch of money on cameras and you haven't equipped them with the latest technology to make those cameras more than just recording devices, which if you don't have any monitoring and you don't have any AI attached to it, it's just a recording device. It's something that'll allow you to look back after the event and see what happened.
It's an evidence curator.
Evidence gathering.
Yeah.
You might be able to, if you have the proper capabilities, you might be able to access the cameras real time during an event. But who's doing that? Law enforcement? Well, we could talk about that. But your emergency people, how do you get them that link? How do you get them access to those cameras when they need access? Do you have somebody at the district, if you're not and you're just recording, do you have somebody at the district who is assigned to go back and look at the cameras and monitor the cameras during any event so they can give you real time or near real time situational awareness? I don't know. Are any of those cameras facing out into your parking lots, into your choke points, into your drop off and pickup areas? So there's lots of questions, right? There's lots of things that they're doing right, and it sounds like we're bashing them a little bit, but the reality is that they're doing a lot of things right as long as they don't stop.
Right. They need to.
As long as they keep going and keep looking at expanding their capabilities and the technology and increasing the redundancies that are there, right? That are to increase their potential for making sure that those buttons are pushed, communications can occur, mapping is utilized, because there's so much you can do with interactive mapping these days that if you think you need a map just so the responding officers can see what or where to go, they're going to go based upon the indicators and what they're being told. And they're not going to have time to look at a map. Maps are used for drills, exercises, physical assets, security assets, safety assets, monitoring and marking and placing those on the map, and for the use during an emergency by the incident command to track what's happening and where it's happening at. So it's not for response. because their focus doesn't allow them the time. If they have time, if they think they have time to look at a map while they're responding to an active threat, they're in the wrong business. There you go.
Can I make a couple more points?
Sure. It's your show.
I'll make the first. Well, it's got your name on it, but it's not Coffee with Ethan. It's Coffee with Kelly. Maybe we might do a different show called Espresso with Ethan, and it might have a little different vibe, and it would be a lot shorter. Maybe. We'll see. I need an espresso machine, so
yeah. There you go.
But I've been looking into those.
Your points.
My points. So I'll make the first one relatively quickly. Based on the conversations that I've had within this group, it's pretty obvious. Still getting over pneumonia, so I'm coughing a little bit. It doesn't take me long to go into Google and type things like the best active threat solution for schools. And I will get a plethora of stuff, of different things. That takes me 10 seconds to do, which tells me a couple things. I'd be willing to bet that they don't have a dedicated school safety director with the experience that we would like them to have and the skill set that we'd like them to have to be able to do that research and make good decisions. Because I'm not a school safety director, but I can go on Google and you give me a minute and I can give you 20 different things that, in my opinion, would work better than.
Yep. Right.
So
you hit the nail on the head there, right?
Yeah. There's that part, right?
Yeah. But
so
now it's trying to decipher which one's the right solution.
Right. And so if you have a dedicated school safety director that has that experience that you can rely on, they're going to be able to make that decision pretty quickly. But based on the conversations I had, it was a completely different group of people that made this decision, that pitched this. I think that's why they got to that. And as you said, I appreciate that they have made strides in the right direction, and I hope that they continue to make strides and make it better. The next point I want to make is also based off these conversations. This effort was approved essentially by the parents. They took this to a vote, and they said that 80% of the people that showed up to that meeting said yes. And I think out of everything, that drives me nuts. And it just solidifies kind of what we've been saying, is that parents need to be involved more. If you're going to a meeting and you're not asking questions about how does it work, can you do this, can you do that, is this really going to protect my kid? If you really start asking those questions, I don't think they would have voted as strongly. They said 80% of people were like, yep, sounds great, let's do it. So that drives me absolutely up a wall, that parents are not more involved with their own child's school safety. Because if you were, I don't think they would have got 80% of the votes.
So let me address both of those.
I'm off my soapbox now.
Okay, but let me address those, because you bring up some good points. It's easy to find solutions if you know what you're looking for. But when you do a Google search and you get 20 pages of solutions, because there's a lot of them out there, we deal with them, our competitors all the time. It's what solves my problem. If it doesn't solve my problem entirely, which one does the best at solving my problem? 2, you have to look at the cost of it and see if there's a way that you can do it for less money, so you get more bang for your buck. Let's say it that way, right? Sure. I'm not trying to say cheap, but I remember I had one of my bosses who wasn't my boss at the time. He worked for another agency, was in charge of that agency, but influenced my agency to spend a boatload of money, chemical weapons gear.
Interesting.
And so military grade, if you know what CBRN is, CBRN protective gear. So it's chemical warfare gear that you would don if you were being attacked by chemical weapons, nuclear fallout, and that kind of stuff.
Was that a common thing you ran into?
There was threats of it after 9/11, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Because they were talking dirty bombs, they were talking all of this stuff. There was this threat of it to the tune of about $500. Like my numbers could be wrong there, but about $500 per suit. The reality is, and the probability is, that we could have had most of those protective properties, with the exception of the nuclear fallout, for about $30 a whack, right? But he said, literally said, I want the best for our troops. And that is the most expensive thing that we have. I'm willing to spend that money. The reality is every one of those suits expired 4 years later, 5 years later. So all of that money, equipping the entire county, every law enforcement officer with $500, $400 each suits, could have been spent better some other way, right? So just because it's more expensive doesn't mean it's better. So ask yourself those questions. Am I accomplishing everything that I need to accomplish? If not, what's the best to get me started? And then what's my plan to get me to where I want to be? Now, on to the second point. Safety is not a democratic process. We don't get to vote on it. Somebody has to make a decision. Somebody who understands what decision needs to be made. We can't afford to say, let's put it to a vote at this meeting, this safety meeting where we're going to discuss this board meeting where we're going to discuss this, and say that that's representative of the entire district. I will tell you, I don't care if your board meeting room is full. The percentage of that district being represented is this much. Yes. Everyone that came there has a personal interest and are representing themselves. They may say, I am representing the parents at my school. No, that's not true. Because if something goes wrong and something happens where whatever it is that you purchased, whatever that goes wrong, that you've elected to use, those parents aren't going to say, oh, that's okay. They're not going to step up and say, this was the best solution we can get. They're not going to defend the school board for them to the other parents.
No, definitely not.
They're not going to. So I get it. I would love to be able to point to somebody else and say, if it's not great, it's their fault. They voted for it. We're just trying to do what you wanted as parents. I'll leave you with this.
Essentially what they did.
We are how long past Columbine?
25 years plus.
25 years plus. 25 years ago in April. And our school district leaders still haven't figured it out that they're responsible for this, to the point where they put it to a vote at a board meeting with parents to make a decision on safety. That's what gets me more than anything else that we've said, is the responsibility is theirs.
Yes. They
don't get to put it to a vote because safety is not a democratic process. In what they're doing, who's responsible for the decision? They can't point to the parents and say, well, you guys voted for it. No, I elected you to make that decision. You're responsible. You need to appoint somebody to the position where they can give you the best information. Do the research that you were looking at. Decipher all 20 pages if that's what you're looking for, right? Go through them. Like, that's what I did. I I went looking for a solution. What did I do? I Googled it, and I came up with, just from my initial research, I came up with 12, 13, some of them right away. Nope, nope, nope. And then got down to a couple. And then as everything occurred to me, as again, I didn't get everything I was looking for, but I got most of what I was looking for. And I got a company that was willing to work with me to get, I had a plan on what I needed. And I got a company that was willing to work with me. And I'm not, this is not a plug, but it's a plug. That company was Crisis Go. They're the only ones that said, what do you mean we don't have everything? What are you looking for? This is what I'm looking for. And we started working for that next year or so over trying to figure out how to make the program better, right? Not one other company did that. Why didn't you go with us? Because of this. Oh, okay, thanks. Not one of them tried to figure it out, right? So
there's a mission behind it, It's we recognize the mission, and it's we want to help you complete that mission.
We want you to be safer. Yeah. We want to help you solve your problems, to help solve the problem of how we respond and how we protect our kids during an emergency. We'll leave it with that. I do want to take 1 second to welcome Calvin, our new marketing. True. What is he? Marketing specialist?
I think he's a marketing coordinator.
Marketing coordinator.
Yeah.
The reason I want to say welcome and thank you, Calvin, is he's the one that's going to have to edit this when we're done with it.
I know we don't want to say Kayla anymore. Kayla's still here, by the way.
Kayla is still here.
We've given her this one of her many job duties to Calvin. Calvin is taking on the reins of podcast editing. So far, he's done a great job. So,
yep. So welcome, Calvin.
If they turn out horrible, blame Calvin.
Well, if you don't, Calvin. We will. Yes. All right. So there you have it.
All right.
Ask the question.
Ask all the questions, please.
Ask all the questions. Your constituency wants you to protect their kids. Don't rely on them. You have a responsibility as a school district, as leaders of your community. It's people who look up to you. Do it correctly. Ask the questions. Have a plan that if it doesn't solve all of your problems, figure out how you're going to solve the rest of them. I'll say this. We will never be able to make schools absolutely safe. 100% safe. We have to continue to make them safer and safer and safer as we go along. If they stop with this purchase and this installation of this equipment, they're doing themselves and their entire community a disservice. If they continue, and this is just part of the plan, and they start asking the next questions, what next? How do we make it better? How do we train our people to use this? If they can't use it, what are their next steps? What are their next responsibilities? How do we communicate all of those things? How do we do that? And as long as they keep doing that, and this is a great decision for them. If this is a one and done, they're going to fall short. Just my opinion.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you have any questions about what we discussed, leave a comment on our website at crisisgo.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Coffee with Kelly, a discussion on school safety.